Hi, everybody. I also want to thank Michigan Horse Council and Brittany and Inger and the whole board and Representative O'Neill for having me today and all these great presenters. I think it's a really terrific opportunity to share more information and stories about all the different ways that we interact with horses. And so I appreciate the invite and all the speakers for joining us today. So my name's Fred Biltman. My wife Ula and I founded Red Horse Center in Fenville, Michigan. We've been doing equine assisted work for a little more than 20 years. And I'm here today representing three organizations: Red Horse, Horses for Mental Health, and Arenas for Change. And I'm going to share the story a little bit about each one of these organizations: Horses for Mental Health and Arenas for Change, being both national and in some cases international organizations that support facilitators like ourselves, and Red Horse being a Fenville, Michigan-based nonprofit that provides equine-assisted services both in mental health and equine-assisted learning, organizational development, and personal development. So we're really glad to be here. When invited to speak here today, I thought a little bit about coming here and speaking to legislators and people involved in all this work, and I kind of wondered what the ask was. And I thought about all the different horses in our lives that we've worked with and listened to, and I thought about what their ask would be. And their ask is for us to listen. So I'm going to share some origin stories about these organizations as a way to illustrate different roles horses have had in helping people. So Horses for Mental Health represents an amazing turning point for our industry. In fact, not so long ago, as Kathy eloquently illustrated, we would have had a hard time even describing our industry or understanding which industry are we in. For more than 20 years, Lynn Thomas led the effort to train and certify facilitators of psychotherapy incorporating horses. She, along with Kathy, CEO of PATH, and many other industry leaders, worked together to bring common language, understanding, and clarity to the many different approaches to partnering with horses to help people, or equine-assisted services, by publishing what's known as a terminology paper. So that was not only helpful in terms of educating people about what we do, it was really a sea change in terms of collaboration. Different organizations, different certifications, different approaches, people from all these, at the time, segmented ways of working with horses coming together, removing walls, removing barriers, in an amazing way. Well, a short time later, in 2021, is when Lynn founded Horses for Mental Health, building on that sense of collaboration, creating a nonprofit to support and advocate for the broader community of organizations, practices, and people who are working with horses to contribute to positive mental health. I want to share a note I put in my notebook earlier. I love the way Kathy explains the interaction. I think that's a great word for us to use, even softer and more appropriate sometimes than working with, because it's that interaction and that collaboration, that communication that makes it so special. So Horses for Mental Health became this broad group there to advocate and support regardless of your approach or what organization or what certification you had, regardless of whether you're an aspiring facilitator or an experienced one who might hit 3, 4, 5 different populations or types of services. And in 2022, Horses for Mental Health launched the Seen Through Horses campaign. As you see here, it was an awareness campaign, a fundraising campaign, and really an unprecedented example of this growing community of collaboration. Never before had so many organizations that approached this in now seemingly common ways, but what felt disparate at the time, had come together for this common cause: building awareness, raising money, supporting charity partners who work with horses to provide mental health for people. So Horses for Mental Health also provides anyone who's interested with resources like evidence-based, peer-reviewed research, demonstrating the measured, validated, positive impact and effect of co-facilitating with horses. So when I look at Horses for Mental Health and kind of see a perspective through that lens, I also see how far we've come. We're no longer just a cute backyard anecdotal story about horses being good for people. We have those stories, and we do it in backyards, but horses and their role with mental health professionals now make up a robust community of providers, bringing proven, safe, and unparalleled services to those in need. Arenas for Change, a young organization also founded by our friend and colleague Lynn Thomas, includes a team of facilitators with decades of experience. Ula and myself are both proud members of the Creators team. We helped build out the ARCH framework of facilitation based on core values and community-focused approach. So creating Arenas for Change and that framework of facilitation was really a unique opportunity to look at 6-7 people with 15, 20 years of experience each, to be able to take all the lessons learned over the years and think about, well, now that we know that, now that these practices are established, now that we've seen so many different stories of healing and transformation, what do we want to keep? What do we want to change? How can we continue to make this inclusive, transformational, and available and accessible? And also, how can we look at our partners, the horses, and make sure we're returning the favor and providing support and collaboration and co-facilitation with them so that we're seeing them as peers worthy of support and conversation as co-facilitators. So seen and heard is both an objective in terms of, I think so many times when people are seeking transformation or validation or processing trauma, one of the most important things is for them to feel seen and heard. There are also acronyms for keystones, facilitator keystones, which are the guideposts and key ideas for facilitators to go through the ARCH framework. And our keystones and values were really what we built this on, and we found that this facilitation framework can go beyond horses. And while it was born out of this community of professionals focused on equine assisted services, working through story and working through this externalizing process and empowering mindset of seeing how clients can transform through their own discoveries, really works in many different settings. So we're seeing the framework applied to working with incorporating nature and dogs and different settings beyond what was traditional for us, framed as equine-assisted psychotherapy or learning. So along the way here, I believe, especially the herd keystones, which are there for the horse professional on the team to really provide an opportunity to look for different elements of that relationship with the horse. So the H stands for holding space, which is preparation, which is realizing that we're creating and holding a space for the client to have their transformation rather than for us to do it, and preparing opportunities for the horse and the human to have interactions is there's an art to that, and looking at that as part of our role of holding space helps shift perspective and give space for the client and their story. E is for experiential, meaning we learn differently when we're engaged, when we're active, and when we're having this interaction rather than being told about maybe what we need to do or what is supposed to happen, really allowing that experience to unfold and be uniquely their own is important. And R is for resonance, which is really something that horses do that can be very difficult to describe. But in sound, resonance is the vibration that lasts longer than the original note or sound. And we see that with horses and humans, that when an interaction happens, there can be this co-regulation, this vibration that happens beneath the surface that can have long-lasting impact. And sometimes somebody sharing a story that's difficult or scary or something they haven't been prepared to share with others, having that first listener being non-judgmental and resonant can make a huge impact. And that's something the horses do in ways really beyond our understanding. And then dynamics is a little bit what Kathy mentioned, is thinking about they're experts at herd dynamics, which is group dynamics, with social structure, with nonverbal communication, with trying to find a way to find safety in the group and find communication that can build that. All this is a little bit of a digression, but through those keystones and through our work, we see it as an elevation of the horse's voice. And that really, instead of seeing them as we've never seen it this way, but I think one could look at this as an outsider and think that maybe see them as a prop or something that we use or work with. And we really see them as co-facilitators, that they have important things to say about how and when things may progress. And they can say that in many different ways if we learn to listen. And watching a client learn to listen and understand what's happening here, that they're having an interaction, a relationship, can be incredibly powerful. So that elevation of them as colleagues and co-facilitators and that interaction is also what differentiates mental health and personal and professional development, organizational development, from some other roles that horses have in our industry, including like recreational companions and being athletes. When they're interacting for the benefit of the relationship and for the benefit of their human partner rather than to deliver a service, things change, and it's an opportunity for us to highlight these strengths and abilities and generosity that they have. Their contribution are their choices, their communication, and their resonance. This also allows horses to have long, specialized, remarkable careers that is not dependent on their physical strength or youthfulness. So Red Horse Center, I have up here that a number of our programs and our mission, we're inspired by the wisdom and healing power of horses, and we want to provide individual or collective transformation. We do this through a number of services. We're inspired by the trauma-informed principles that are kind of reflected in those values in the bottom center of the screen. And we've come to realize that horses continue to kind of fuel creativity in different programs that can go back and forth between therapy and mental health services, but also what we like to call mental health supports, which is not necessarily a technical term, but workshops that are supportive to positive mental health but may not be therapy. Workshops like learning how trauma-informed principles can create safe and inclusive environment for people of trauma, which if anybody thought they or we might not, maybe not everybody has experienced trauma, I think the last 3 years as a collective trauma dispels that myth. Everyone has experienced trauma and is deserving of trauma-informed space that can help them be their whole selves. So we've learned to incorporate those principles into just about everything we do, including teaching them through our healing culture through a trauma-informed lens class. We have a herd leadership workshop that does very light horse and human collaboration skills, some horsemanship like leading, but also talking about approach and how, when does a horse notice that we're coming into their space, and can we notice that we're asking to share space with them before we ask for their attention? And can we collect yes at approach and engage before we ask for any cued behavior? That lends itself to looking at consent and social skills and leadership and interactions. It's excellent for people of all ages, but it's been really valuable with the school that we work with. And we have an implicit bias training. And we also do team retreats where we're going to take that team's objective. What are they working on? Is it mission and vision? Is it morale? Is it basically being more intentional about their company culture? So it brings me to a story that in January of this year, we were in our first pilot program of herd leadership with our local school district, Fenville Public Schools, when tragedy struck. They lost a family of 4 to a murder-suicide, and that included 2 students. So we were grateful to be in relationship already so that when they called, we could answer. And, pardon me. So we were part of the critical incident team in response to that and the mental health needs of students and faculty. So we created a program called Story Circles for Healing, community support group, and we welcomed students and faculty weekly. And the support and comfort that our herd provided those adults and children had deep impact. And I believe it provided experiences in healing that won't be forgotten. Which brings us to mental health. These are some national stats from the National Alliance for Mental Illness. And so no matter what way you look at it, we have a mental health crisis in this state and in this country. Suicide rates are huge and significant. Like I said, you don't need to be a mental health professional to understand that we've been through a remarkably traumatic time and that mental illness is on the rise. If you think about the ACEs study, Adverse Childhood Experiences, and how that study demonstrates that these adverse childhood experiences when we're young can affect our overall health, our mental health for the rest of our lives. Recovery is impossible, but the point here is that the need for effective, safe, and ongoing, sustainable mental health services is a need that is here to stay. We need to provide support and help for positive mental health for the duration. It's not something that we can expect to solve and then end. So finding ways that are effective and safe and transformative is essential. So now, this next video is going to share a little bit about mental health. It's produced by Horses for Mental Health.
Noelle was a victim of domestic violence. After a couple of years of traditional talk therapy, she continued to struggle in her emotional healing and decided to try a mental health program incorporating horses. When she first came to our farm, she spoke timidly and was withdrawn, fearful, angry. During her first session, we introduced her to our mental health specialists, facilities, and horses. She was then invited to spend time and interact with the herd of horses in the arena. As she stepped into the space, immediately, our big, black standardbred approached her. Noelle's body shrunk back, and she cried out, "I can't do this!" As a result of her years of trauma, Noelle was in a chronic state of feeling unsafe. She reacted to her environment with fear and anxiety, stifling her ability to develop healthy relationships and pursue her dreams. During the next several sessions, we invited her to build relationships with the horses in a way that she felt safe. She chose to spend time with individual horses near their stalls, brushing them while the facilitators held their lead ropes. Getting comfortable with such big animals took time, but focusing on brushing them helped her feel calm and process her emotions. She spoke to the horses and facilitators about her story, losses, and fears. As her healing and confidence strengthened, she decided to re-enter the horses' arena. The same big standardbred horse came to her, moving into her space. However, this time, she pushed back and commanded, "Hey, back off." And the big horse did. With the help of the horses and the facilitators, Noelle rediscovered the voice she lost from years of abuse, a voice of empowerment. Once she found that voice, she began setting healthy boundaries in her relationships with others and herself. Noelle now supports others who have survived domestic violence to find their empowered voice through the help of horses.
So I let that go through the credits a little bit because it's another visual example of just how many collaborators there were in the Seen Through Horses campaign and how powerful some of those stories were and how important that can be for many people who thought we were providing therapy to horses all these years. So it's a remarkable shift. We've come a long way. So I looked up some stats through LYRA on what they call workforce mental health. You can call it workplace culture, but this idea of what does this need look like when we move from a personal therapy and we look at where we spend a lot of time and have a lot of our relationships, which is at work. And whatever you want to call it there, that is also facing a crisis. We've had the Great Resignation, we've had all these different shifts and went through this, again, unprecedented time through shutdowns. And here are their top 5 insights for 2023. Most workers face mental health struggles and don't get help. Many employees struggle to find the right care. People are discussing mental health at work, which is a significant culture shift. This is a stunning, not surprising, but significant one. Managers lack the needed mental health resources. That's one of the areas that I think organizational development, mental health support workshops like trauma-informed principles can really have a big impact, is that you have managers who are trained to manage some process, and they don't necessarily receive the training to hold space for people who've experienced trauma, and I think that's something that can change, be actionable. And employees, I don't think this is a surprise to anybody, employees are increasingly stressed and burned out. So I think the point here is that in every community, our friends, our families, our colleagues, everyone we know is in need of support. So this next video comes from our friends in Minnesota, and it explores some intense challenges of some of the toughest jobs and what one state legislator did to address it.
I've been a police officer for a little over 7 years.
I love being a firefighter. I'm very proud of being a firefighter, of getting to do that work.
Abijah's is a mental health organization that incorporates horses to work with military, first responders, surrounding public who are struggling with PTSD, trauma, depression, anxiety.
As I've been in the legislature, I've found that mental health has become a larger, more important issue. We saw kids struggling with anxiety, teenage suicides, our first responders and our military people coming back with anxiety and post-traumatic stress syndrome.
So I had a traumatic call. Initially, I thought it was just something that I would be able to handle because I handled it before. I just knew that I needed help. And the first step was to admit it and to get help.
My wife has just been amazing, and she has known several times when I'll come home and say, I need a hug, and she'll say, oh, what happened? And I'll say, I don't want to talk about it. I just need a hug. I'll talk later.
Where do you think you would have been without Abijah's?
I might have tried to kill myself. I was suicidal.
Want you close to me, close to me, close to me, oh close to me.
They are a strong, independent group of individuals who face traumas at a rate 10 to 100 times what the average person in the general population is dealing with on a daily basis. What is becoming more clear to our legislation is that this model is particularly helpful for the first responder population.
Once I fully understood what the program does and the amazing results that they get, I was happy to make a request to the legislature for $250,000 that would provide about 1,000 sessions to our firefighters and first responders, police, and received a lot of good bipartisan support.
Based on the science, based on the experience that we already have, this seems like a great way to help people living with PTSD to be able to go on with their lives, to be there for their families.
I think it's one thing to be able to name your feelings, like, yeah, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling overwhelmed, but it's a completely different experience to see it in a 1,000-pound animal. I was in such a different place when I first started, and it's made me a stronger person, it's made me a better mom, it's made me a better wife, and it's made me a better officer.
Needing mental health support isn't a weakness. I truly feel like Abijah saved my life.
What I would say to other lawmakers around the state or around the country is keep an open mind. We ask our first responders to do so much for us. I think we owe it to them to give them the best type of therapy and supports that we can.
Close to me, close to me.
The Seen Through Horses campaign is so important because it's spreading the word as to what these amazing animals are able to do with people and for people who are struggling with mental health. And we need to increase that access across the country so every single individual from young to old can find a place in their state to get these services. My job is truly to see and bear witness to miracles, and it's because of the power of these animals.
Equine assisted services, especially for us personal and professional development and mental health, are effective, safe, and valuable. They also carry additional costs and need extra community support. There's space to consider, there's horses, there's additional facilitators. So it's not apples and apples when it comes to providing that support to individuals. But the results are worth it. Horses, like I mentioned, they're specialists in group dynamics, nonverbal communication, and empathy. They're generous healers. As mentioned earlier, they're also animals of prey. They've suffered from trauma, often at the hands of humans as well. They are incredibly resilient. However, if they're in our programs, they're domesticated animals, and they depend on us for their quality of life, and we need to continue to invest in that. We must continue to advocate for their value and their ability beyond their physical strength and athleticism. We must educate about the importance of respectful, trauma-informed care for the horses and the humans at all ages, and help horses continue to contribute meaningfully. So, to everybody, but especially legislators, next time you're grappling with how to respond to the difficult and pressing issues of the mental health crisis in the state, the need for trauma-informed care, developing conflict de-escalation skills and violence prevention in our communities, or developing young leaders and fresh solutions, we encourage you to look to and listen to the horses. We believe, thank you. Thank you. And in closing, we believe that if we keep listening and we keep collaborating, we'll all have opportunities to be seen, heard, and healthy. Thank you.